It's 7:18. I'm Pete.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Rich. And this is Loaded Mag. So, good evening, boys. How are you two?
All good.
Chris, you all right, mate? Are you frozen in time again?
Oh, no.
That's a great start to the show.
Yeah. No, it's all good. All good today. You know what? We've had some cracking weather recently, so it's hard not to be okay. I mean, the England game wasn't great, but no, it's after like 3 weeks of constant rain, it's been good to have some decent weather so you can just enjoy the moment, regardless of what the situation is with football.
Yeah, I had the England game in the background while I was putting the show together. And to be fair, I didn't think it was much. The improved second half and stuff like that, but it was a friendly. So, but the important thing starts this weekend, doesn't it? So, but we'll get into that on another day.
Yeah.
So we'll hopefully wait for Chris to get logged back in, everyone, and then we'll start talking all things Newcastle. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about that has been mentioned over the weekend and the last few days has been once again the takeover, as per usual. Always drags us. So we'll get done and dusted to start with. And at the weekend there was a picture link that. Ashley's given the green light to the Saudi consortium to get ready within a month. So it was taken from a paper that we know as a non-reliable rag as such. So, pinch of salt and everything if it goes like that. But at the end of the day, it's stuff that we still have to discuss anyway. And I know that I'm hopeful about it. And, it's one of these where, whether you believe it or not, you still want it to happen. So on that one, Pete, what did you make of it with obviously the CAT trial starting this Friday and arbitration due to start in July?
Well, when I saw it pop up on Twitter, to begin with, I was just shocked. I was shocked really because there hasn't really been many positive sort of lines with regards to the takeover written recently. So I was actually quite shocked that there was something quite positive about it. So that took me aback a little bit. Then you look at it a little bit more in detail. You look at it and the natural reaction is it's the Sun. They're not reliable, all the rest of it. So it's kind of like it then becomes like a 50-50. Is it anything you really need to believe in? Is it just a load of rubbish? Then you look at the guy that's written it. I can't remember his name, but Ken something. I think it was. Not anyone that you really know that's really been covering the takeover with any detail. Doesn't mean that it's not true, but you kind of look at the facts around things to see whether it's genuine or whether it's something you can sort of start to hang your hopes on. But reading the article. You read the title, you read the article and what has been said. He's telling the consortium to get ready within a month for the takeover to happen. What you actually look at in the article, for me, there's nothing actually in there that's not wrong, because the reality is that with the arbitration coming to a close, or certainly they're going to say their piece over potentially a week, maybe a little bit more, and then they'll come to their decision. It will be within the next month that we will have a better idea of where this club is going, whether we're going forward with an owners and directors test, and potentially having new owners, or whether we're, back to square one again. So, I then read the article and then actually thought, really, they've not told us anything that we didn't already know. But actually, it is what it is. We have got literally a month to find out everything. So I just took it as that, really. and didn't hype it up too much. I read it, I kind of moved on from it. A lot of people have hyped it up on social media and in a positive and negative way, but we've been here before. We know the score, and you just got to read it, digest, and move on.
Yeah, it's rinse and repeat, isn't it? That's it. It's just the same thing over and over. And I think, to be fair, I don't know what you think, Chris, but I think until Friday, we'll not know any different, because obviously with the cat case, I think it's going to be played out quite a bit in public. So we'll probably find out a lot more from Friday onwards, I would say.
Yeah, do you know what, mate? It's exciting, but like Pete rightly said, there's nothing in that article that is really groundbreaking. And when you actually look at what's been said, it's basically saying that Mike Ashley has apparently told Amanda Staveley that things, to be prepared, get ready. Now, no one's going to actually know that Mike Ashley has told Amanda Staveley that, but why would he not say that? He's super confident about this deal going through, and June and July seem like critical months, don't they, based on what we've seen and what we know in terms of the hearing and evidence having to be submitted, etc. So it's no surprise, and the only thing that does strike me as really positive, like Pete's alluded to as well, is the fact that the media are kind of getting on board with it. Whereas if you look at between when the article was issued and say the last 6 months, it's just been quiet, hasn't it? No one said anything. So hopefully there is some rumours going on in the corridors, and maybe that's why this press release has come out. It's not, like I've said before, it's not groundbreaking. It's nothing that you can pin your hopes on, or there's no quotes in there, because obviously nobody knows what Mike Ashley said to Amanda Staveley, but it's good that it's getting the attention. And obviously after the Sun issue there, and I'm sure people will probably have an idea of my feelings on the Sun, but after they've issued it, the Daily Mail have followed suit. I believe the Shields Gazette have quoted it, and other sources have quoted it. So obviously that would say to me that there is a bit of confidence in what's been said.
Yeah.
So there's nothing directly there, but the fact that it's being spoken about, it's all media attention on the club, on the Premier League, and that's what we want, because we want the pressure to be cranked up a touch, because it will hopefully mean that pressure's on, and maybe the Premier League will think, well, this is too much, and if they don't get it the way that they want it to go, it could mean that they crumble and they just go, right, listen, let's just back down and let them have the takeover. And that's certainly what I'm hoping from it anyway, Rich.
Yeah, it's the thing. I mean, I'm hoping what Trulls has put in the chat might be the info that we all hope is going to happen. You never know; it might not go to Cat, and there's still obviously pretty much the full week to go through where it could be settled before it hits the courtrooms on Friday. So I think that's the best hope that we can all think it might happen. But fingers crossed. And I think what Keith from NCSL does say when he's on Steve's show on a Friday night is, the competition barristers wouldn't have took this on if they didn't think there was a fantastic chance they were going to beat the Premier League in the case. So hopefully that goes through, and then from there, if we win that case, it should be, you'd imagine, it would be plain sailing from there on the separation case when that hits next month. So. But I think, to be fair, that's probably all we can't really talk about takeover-wise, because we've discussed it all. Unless either of you have got any more on that.
You know what, Rich?
Yeah.
I don't think they continue with the Cat if we get through arbitration. If we win arbitration, we get to reopen the owners or directors test with regard to the separation, and that situation gets cleared. I honestly believe that the Cat disappears. And I think that would probably be a bargaining chip. I think they'll go through the process up until arbitration's done, because that's the Premier League's way of delaying up until they couldn't possibly delay any longer. But when the arbitration's done, we will know either way, because they're not going to deal now, because there's still an arbitration to do, and they've still got a chance of winning. Yeah. So they're going to continue that through. But honestly, I think if the arbitration goes through and it ends up being sort of a landslide in the club's favour, I that'll be one of the things. I think it'll be a case of the Premier League will say, okay, we'll there's nothing we can do now to possibly hold you guys back, because they're going to put people in place in the owners and directors test that are going to sail through it. There's no doubt about that. And it was all the names that were mentioned this time last year were all names that didn't have any concerns raised at all that would stop the owners and directors test. Unfortunately, we didn't get to that stage. So I honestly believe that when we're at that stage, the Premier League will say, right, okay, we'll sort your takeover, but we want the cat to kind of fall away. And I think as long as Mike Ashley gets his money, which is his 340, 350, whatever it's been sort of billed at in terms of his finances, as long as he gets that, and as long as the consortium get the club, I don't think they'll take it any further. And I think like it's been this sort of like these double silver bullets that they keep talking about, aimed towards the Premier League. I think this is done in order to force the deal through. And the sooner that's done, the better. So that's just my little take on that.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to see what happens, won't we? That's the old little saying, see what happens. And, we'll just hopefully, it goes the way we all the Newcastle fans want it to go. Because I don't think any of us would like it, PIF and the consortium to walk away and see another team from a different league or something like that taken over by that consortium, just to look back with rose-tinted glasses and think, what could have been? Do you know what I mean? I think that's, we've like as Mike Ashley said last year, it's like Newcastle fans have won the lottery and had refused to pay out. So I suppose it is what it is. But I think what we'll do is after just over 10 minutes of takeover chat and no new developments, what we'll do is we'll move on to some developments that came through yesterday. And what actually was said, and it was picked up, regards our old friend Rafa Benitez. So obviously, he's getting linked with job after job. Everton came up. There was rumours about Wolves and Spurs when they became free as well. But then there was a link yesterday. It's actually been getting quite a lot of traction in the Turkish media. Is that Rafa is thinking about going to Fenerbahce. Now, the rumour is that his manager is due in Turkey tomorrow, in Istanbul tomorrow, to finalise a deal with him possibly taking over as manager from as soon as the 16th of June. Now, to me, I think it's completely clickbait, and I think it's just to keep his name relevant in the press. Hopefully, so the process of the takeover can go through, and hopefully we can bring him back to where we all want, and we can see this smiling face again back in our in our dugouts, and put that smile on all of the fans' faces. So, Pete, what do you make of that possible news of him being linked to Fenerbahce?
We were talking off air just before we came on and about this, and I'm of the mindset, and we discussed it a couple of weeks ago about the potential of Rafa Benitez taking another job. And because we're getting to such a delicate time now in the summer, not just with Newcastle and the arbitration and everything that's going on, but there's a massive merry-go-round of managers, which we've already discussed on the previous show last week. And it's a case of, if Rafa Benitez is taking a job right now, it says to me that the takeover might not be where we want it to be. If he's not prepared to wait another month, he's waited this long. He's had offer. There's no doubts he's had offers of other clubs since January, since he came away from the club in China. And it'd be really disappointing that he takes a job now. If the arbitration doesn't go our way in July and he gets offered a job, fair enough, because he's waited as long as he could. But at this point now, it would be a shame, for him to take that job. Do I believe it's the case? As you said, Rich, it's one of those things that at the moment there are people that are pushing Rafa Benitez into other jobs. You had it from Jamie Carragher, who wrote an article the other day that was, saying that Everton would be the perfect club for him. There are people out there that don't want Rafa Benitez to be Newcastle manager. They don't want him to return to this club. They are trying to pigeonhole into any job that's possible, that's available out there, and you can understand it. He's a world-class manager, and I get that. So we need to expect these type of articles, but as you said, I think on this occasion, unless something moves really quickly in the next 24, 48 hours, I think that article will completely just disappear.
Yeah, what do you make on it, Chris?
I don't know, mate. I was a bit torn about it. Various things are going through my mind. I mean, I always say this, as Pete says, but following on from what Pete's just said, in terms of the media making it up, it could be that. I do think that Fenerbahce would be a club he'd be interested in, but that would be on the assumption that Newcastle isn't a goer, or that that the takeover is not going to happen. So do I believe talks have taken place? They may have done. But I do think that it could even, it could even be like a bit of a bargaining tool from Rafa Benitez's camp. It could be to ramp up a bit of pressure, maybe to get him a better deal at Newcastle. Who knows? I mean, I think he's fully aware that the new owners, or the potential new owners, see him as number one choice. And I think he sees us as number one choice. Like, I think he would rather go to Newcastle than many other clubs that may want his signature and want him to go forward with their club as manager. But I do think that he is waiting for Newcastle. It is a concern, and it is something that I am a bit nervous over. But then on the other hand, I do also, I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason. And I think if we did have to go elsewhere, the one thing that is on our side is that there is a lot of managers who are currently out of a job at the moment. So I do think, we could bring somebody in. If the biggest thing for me is, if he was to sign a contract with Fenerbahce, say this week, I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, gutted, I wanted him, as part of the new project we should do. I'd be more thinking, wow, is this takeover going to go through? That would be my biggest concern, because I would firmly believe that he is top of the list and that he is waiting for this takeover to go through. So if he was to take another job, I would think, ooh, okay. And then my confidence in this takeover would go from, like, say, a 90% down to about 40, because I think we all know that he's been waiting in the wings. So if he, seemingly has given up, I'd be thinking, wow, that's quite a statement. And I think Liam Kennedy said that recently, didn't he? That he would have concerns if Rafa Benitez took another job, because that to him would signal this takeover isn't quite where we thought it was, or it isn't going to happen like we thought it was. But yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on it, but I'm not overly concerned, because the media have often got it wrong, haven't they? So I'm not panicking as such, but I will be keeping a close eye on it. And it does feel, I don't know whether you lads think this as well, but sitting here on a Sunday, this week feels like a big week, doesn't it? It really, I know we've said that in the past about many different dates and stuff, but I don't know what it is, but this week just feels like it's coming to, like, the boiling point. I just feel like by the end of this week, we're gonna feel even more confident, or our hopes are just going to be shattered. I don't think we'll get to the end of this week coming up and not, be in a place where we know more about where things are going. I think we're going to know quite a bit probably by Friday, Saturday next week.
I think there would be. I reckon there's going to be. I think your feeling, Chris, is exactly how the fan base are going to be feeling.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to necessarily be just this week. I think we're going to get little snippets now. On maybe a Tuesday and a Friday. Friday seems to be the big day with Newcastle.
Doesn't it?
There's always some sort of massive update on a Friday. I don't know what it is.
A Tuesday or a Friday, isn't it? Whenever Keith or Liam's on there, Steve shows.
It's
or
like
the Fab Four.
that. It goes back years. Like I was convinced at one point. I think it was under, I think, McLaren. Like, all of those signings came through on a Friday for some reason, like really strange reason. Like nothing would happen throughout the week, and then all of a sudden, bang, Friday, a player would be in Newcastle taking a medical. Like it would sign late Friday afternoon or early Saturday morning. It was like that thing all the time, and it seems it's been the same with Takeover. Like the noise and the real information comes out on the Thursday, Friday of each week. And I honestly think now, between now and when we know what the outcome is of the arbitration, we'll get those little snippets every single week. But just to add on a little bit about the Rafa Benitez thing, I would be absolutely shocked if Amanda Staveley and some elements of those consortium are not having those initial conversations with Rafa to say, we want you, we're fighting for this takeover, we're a month away potentially of getting back on the owners and directors test, and that when we're at that point, you will know that you are our first choice. Just hold on. And I'd be shocked if that conversation is not happening. And I believe without any proof, I believe that conversation is happening, or it certainly has since January, to say this is where we're at, this is what we're doing. So again, it just feeds into that point. If the Fenerbahce job does get taken by Rafa, it just reiterates Chris's point in that, where is this takeover at? I mean, he's not the only manager out there. Of course, there are other managers, and look, with the finances that consortium would have available, we'd be able to buy a manager out of their contract. So at another club. So it's not like we're looking for just managers that are unemployed, but he would be completely the one that you go for. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of moving parts over these weeks, and I'm partly very excited about it, but partly absolutely crapping it. You don't know which way it's going to swing.
I think like, even if it was to go to Fenerbahce, there's nothing to turn around and say there's like a release clause put into his contract that if the takeover does go through, that he has free, he can leave the club, to go to Newcastle. But I think what people have got to remember is it was Rafa that brought Amanda Staveley to the table originally in 2017. So there's a big connection between the consortium and Rafa. And if you remember correctly, when there was all the negotiations around Rafa possibly staying and going just before he got to leave, the consortium did turn around. We're pushing for one of the part of the package was that Rafa had to be manager. So obviously we know that that didn't happen, and the takeover didn't go through. Then there's nothing to say that we know that this consortium wants Rafa. We know that we believe that, and they believe that he can finish the job he started. In that first 4 years when he came back in and took this back up from the Championship, and then and built this, to I suppose a middle of the road Premier League team with no budget.
Yeah,
I see a lot of people have been saying, "Oh well, look, Steve Bruce has done that," but Steve Bruce has had a lot more money spent than what they might actually ever give Rafa Benitez. So that's it. I think that we'll lead out. But just go back on what Keith's point there on the comment. Keith, we discussed that right at the very start of the show, before you came on. So if you want to rewind that back or watch back after we've gone through the show, it will be there to discuss that for you. Okay. So, Paul, that's one side of the silly season discussed. Now the next part of the silly season is transfers. So the one thing that we do know is that Chris's love-in with this gentleman is now come to an end. And unfortunately, he has left the club. Obviously, he was on the Premier League released list. So unfortunately, he won't be back at the club at this moment in time. There's plenty. There could be plenty of time to organise another pay-as-you-play deal or something like that. But at this moment in time, unfortunately, he has left the club. Also, on what was leaked on the Premier League release list, get my words out, was the fact that this gentleman has been made an offer. So at this moment in time, he hasn't actually signed a contract as yet, but there is an offer pending for Federico Fernandez, and at the moment they've kept him on the retained list for next season. So, lads, what do you make of those two to start with?
Sorry, Chris. I apologise in advance, but it had to happen. Andy Carroll had to go. And you know what? The one thing that we had question marks with him about was his fitness, and he's proved in the last year, because he's trained every week and he's been ready to play, just not been given a chance, that his fitness is okay. So the one thing I'll say is that I think 32 now. I think he's got a couple of years elsewhere. And I think he could go and play somewhere else, somewhere like a West Brom, or he could probably do a job down at Fulham or somewhere like that. He could do a job for a team and play more minutes and probably get some goals under his belt and get that confidence back. But for where we are as a team and where we're looking to go, I just think we need to move on from him. The sentimental side needs to be put aside. He is a Geordie. We'd love to have him back. He has got his goal, although it's only one against Leicester, so he can say he scored. But you look at, and we'll get onto transfers in a second, but you look at the type of players that we have been sort of linked with recently, you would take them all day over Andy Carroll. And that's just the reality of it, unfortunately. But, if he was to sort of hang up his boots, the first thing I would be doing is saying, look, if you want to come and do your coaching badges and start working with the academy or getting in with the under 23s, someone that knows the club, passionate about the club, someone that the young Geordies, coming through the ranks, that can look up to someone that's been in this position, come through the academy into the first team, and then got a big move to a Premier League club, come back and played for his hometown club. He is a great example of what you would want in the academy or the under 23 setup. So there is a potential place for him there if he was to hang up his boots. But I don't think he will. Like I say, I think he's got a couple of years left, but definitely the right decision. With regards to Fede Fernandez, he just needs to get this deal signed. He has to be staying. He has been brilliant as that central defender. I was a little bit worried when Lascelles got injured, and we were talking about him missing the end of the season because of his leadership, and he hadn't been that bad when he played before he got injured. He'd been doing okay. But Fede Fernandez has stepped into that central defensive position of the back three, and he's made it his own. He's really organised that, and he's been an unsung hero in a lot of games. He's defended very, very well. If we were to lose him, regardless of how old he is, 33, we had Colaccini up until he was 35, and for me, Fede Fernandez is just as good as Colaccini. So he could still do a job for another couple of years. So I would definitely give him another extension. From what I've heard, he really wants to stay at the club. He's happy here. So if he's happy here, I'm happy to keep him.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you just touched on there, which was, and also Donald's just put in the chat there, that Fernandez was probably our best defender for the majority of the season. And one of the things that actually gets missed at with regards to Fernandez was he was missing for about 3 months from January. When he got struck down with COVID, and he was feeling very lax, and he didn't have much energy. He was meant to be struggling from tight calves and stuff because of all the setbacks and stuff that he had from it. But he also tied, and he came back the same game that Wilson and ASM came back in the Burnley game. And you've also got to look at the run that he's had, that the team had, even with him part of the team. Do you know what I mean? They looked a lot more solid at the back. And he's that leader that we've missed at times. He's pretty vocal on the pitch, and I think that's one of the things that I know that this, we'll discuss this with a couple of the other people who've been linked over the weekend and in the last week, who seem to be linked in that centre back position. But at this moment in time, with who we've actually got in there, there's also the rumour that Lejeune, he's more than happy to come back and see out the last year of his contract. However, he doesn't want to be a bit part player, which is fair enough. And, when he's been fit and he was playing when Rafa was here, he was probably one of our better defenders, I thought. He was a fantastic ball-winning defender. I always thought he should have been better on one of the other side of the defence or in the middle, but he tended to play on the left of the three when we played the three. So I would like to see him brought back in. I think Lejeune's a very underrated player. What do you think, Chris, on regards Carroll? Well, I know you're going to think about Carroll, but what do you think about Fernandez?
Yeah, well, I'll start with Fernandez, mate, because really that's the most important one. I think, we can't let go of Fede Fernandez. I think, was it Donald who put it up there? He's been our best defender, and he probably is our best defender. And it was interesting you mentioned Lejeune as well, Rich, because Lejeune, he also struggled with injury, didn't he? And then he came back. And then if you remember, Bruce threw him right in, and you could see he was really out of his comfort zone. He wasn't fit. He wasn't ready. And I think it really knocked his confidence. And then he goes out on loan to La Liga and as an absolute stormer. Because he gets his fitness back, he has his confidence back. So I'd love to see Lejeune come back next season. And similarly, I want to see Fernandez stay as well. I mean, regardless of this takeover, what people will be aware of, or they should be aware of, is that you can't, even if this takeover goes through tomorrow and we get Rafa Benitez back and we're all buzzing, we're all made up, you can't go out and buy 20 new players because it's just not going to happen. You're going to gradually have to build and improve slowly but surely, a bit like how Leicester are doing it. And I hope we get to touch on Leicester, by the way, because I've seen the players they're linked with and I'm just like, oh my God, their recruitment is just so spot on. It's unreal. Like the players they've been linked with now, and you'll notice every window they top up maybe 1, 2, 3 players, and they just sort out positions that they need to do. Now, for me, in terms of going forward, the centre backs and the goalkeeper's position are probably the ones that we don't need that much work on. We don't need that much surgery on them at this present moment. Do I want to see a better defence in 5 years? Of course I do. But between now and the next few windows, if we were to get the takeover, I'd maybe bring in one centre back possibly. I wouldn't be bringing in a new goalie unless, of course, we lost 1 or 2 goalies. But I think, having the likes of Lejeune, Fernandez, Dummett, Clark, I've got no real big issue with those. I think they're solid and I think they're good enough. I certainly think they're probably top 10 defenders. In terms of in the Premier League, I think they'd be good enough to get us in and around that position. It's really the other positions that we need to shore up. We need to improve our central midfield. I'd like to see another winger. We obviously need 1 or 2 strikers. We need to sort out the wing back position, especially if Richie goes. We need another backup left back. Jamal Lewis doesn't look quite ready at the moment. Maybe next season could be his season. I don't know. But we need a new left back. We definitely need a new right back. It's all little positions like that, and we've got to slowly build. And if we were to bring in 5 or 6 players in this summer going into the new season, I'd be happy. But yeah, Federico Fernandez for me is massive. And now I'm going to get on to my favourite subject, which is Andy Carroll. So Andy Carroll, everyone knows I love Andy Carroll, and I do feel, and I'll stick with this till I go blue in the face. I do feel like he's not really had a good run of the green this season. I really don't. And when he's come on as a substitute, I've always thought he's shown more than maybe what's been on the pitch at the time. I wouldn't pick Andy Carroll over Callum Wilson, obviously, but I would prefer to see Andy Carroll come on than Dwight Gale, Muto, Joe Linton. That's me personally. That's what I would prefer to see. However, as I've said before, if we were to get a takeover, I'd get Andy Carroll a taxi myself if we got a takeover. Do you know what I mean? But I'm thinking in terms of, let's say the takeover doesn't happen. For me, I would have kept him because we're not going to spend hundreds of millions of pounds. Well, we're not even going to spend £50 million, are we? If this takeover doesn't go through, so I would keep hold of Andy Carroll in that sense. And as I've said, with the pay-as-you-play deal, it just doesn't feel like that much of a risk to me. He wants to be here. He loves pulling on the black and white shirt. He'll give his all. And that's really all we want to see as Newcastle fans. I would much rather have him on a pay-as-you-play than have someone like Dwight Gale on 40 grand a week who doesn't want to be here. And when he does come on the pitch, it's lacklustre. It doesn't look bothered. So for me, that's why I've so adamantly wanted to keep Andy Carroll. But I've also seen the links, with the likes of Josh King. I won't go too much into it because I know we're probably going to discuss that. But if you were to ask me, would I prefer Josh King or Andy Carroll? I'd take Josh King, obviously. But based on what I'm looking at the moment and our squad depth and the lack, and the fact that we need new players coming in various different positions. That's why I was saying I'd keep Andy Carroll, because from what I've seen this season, or the very little I've seen this season, he's not looked that bad to me. And you rightly said there, Rich, and I think Pete said it, he's got a couple of years left in him. He's not this cart horse or this donkey that people talk about. All right, he's not going to get you 20 goals a season. We know that. But even he reminds me so much of like a Duncan Ferguson. He's that kind of player where he comes on the pitch and nobody likes playing against him. And for me, that's what I like about him. He's one of those players where there's not many of him about. The biggest likeness to Andy Carroll, I'd say, is probably Chris Wood. he's just awkward, and he causes defenders problems, and that's what I like about him. But yeah, it looks like he's going, which is sad. But again, let's say in a week's time, they confirm the takeover at gone flu. I wouldn't care less if he's gone. I'll be honest. But I'm just thinking with me sensible hat on, if you know what I mean, just in case we all get let down, and then we've released him. He's gone to like a West Brom, and then we're stuck with Wilson, who obviously, I'm not saying we're stuck with Wilson, but we've got Wilson, and then we've got Gale and Muto, and we're not going to go out and spend 15-20 million on a striker, and then I'd think, oh, we should have kept him. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah, it's just before we move on to discuss the rest. I just want to say, everyone who's watching the chat, if you haven't, thanks for watching. Obviously, like and comment as you have been doing. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, just remember it is free, and you can do that just by clicking the thumbs up and the subscribe button on your YouTube page. So, as you were just touching on there, Chris, with Carroll leaving. And we'll move on to the rumoured targets. Obviously, Josh King has been linked quite a few times in the press this week. He's on a free transfer, so he would fit in there as Donnell pointed out earlier on. This could be where we're shopping if things don't speed up or anywhere else. So that fits the model of a Mike Ashley Newcastle. So I think Josh King, obviously, we're not having to have the pay the big transfer fee, would allow us to give him a little bit more wages if needs be, and a bit more of a sign-on fee. But it's promising for him on that, because obviously, a lot of people will be saying, aren't we signing too many Bournemouth players though? But then we've got a link now with Bournemouth, with Richie, with Fraser, with Wilson, even with Graham Jones in the backroom staff. But that's good though, because I think in a ways it means you've got an understanding and the chemistry possibly already there. King and Wilson, what the way that Newcastle play, might not be on the pitch much at the same time. It could be either or depending on how Newcastle play, or how Bruce or whoever's in charge next season might actually want to take Newcastle formation-wise. Bruce keeps saying he wants to do it his way, but then he ends up reverting back to the start of the season formation, the 3-5-2 and stuff like that. So, how we're going to start the season, depending on who's going to be in the boardroom, who's going to be in the dugouts, But I think at this moment in time, obviously, I think Josh King's probably a decent person, a replacement for Carroll. I would probably play him over Gale. So I think it's a good step up on that. But I still don't think I would still class him more of a backup compared to Callum Wilson. What would you reckon on that, Pete?
For me, Josh King starts.
Really?
If he comes in, he starts. I thought him and Callum Wilson, when they played together at Bournemouth, had a fantastic relationship. They're good friends anyway, off the pitch, which is always a good thing. But if you look at the way in which we set up our team, we're effectively playing with St Maximin as a striker at the moment. Or when St Maximin's not playing, we play Joe Linton alongside Wilson. Now, for me, Josh King's a better player than Joe Linton, and he's certainly a better goal threat. And when you're playing with someone that you've got a connection with and an understanding with, it works out better. Now, Josh King is not like a Callum Wilson in terms of running in and behind. He can do that, but he's not got the same quality. What he does do is the other bits to allow Callum Wilson to run in and behind. So he's big, he's strong, he can hold up the ball, he can battle. Okay, but like I say, he's got an eye for goal and he can score goals. His goal record's not too bad. I think it's like something like 40-something goals in 150-odd appearances in the Premier League. It's that, Joe Linton's getting nowhere near that. So, for me, he's an upgrade and he's for free. He's for free. You're instantly getting a better player than Dwight Gale and Andy Carroll. And for me, I think I don't look at the Everton loan because I thought he was treated quite badly at Everton. I thought it was a real bad move for him. I think he's gone on. He's decided to join them based on how they were doing in the league at that particular time, not necessarily based on would I get game time, because they play predominantly with one striker, so he was always going to come off the bench. Whereas the way we set up, he's going to get a lot more game time. And actually, if he starts the season well, potentially if he does sign and gets a couple of goals, he could be an absolute starter for us. The Bournemouth thing, I've not got an issue with. You know, I just haven't. With our current owner and our current situation, when you've got a free transfer like Josh King, you know, who potentially, if you're going to sign him, you're paying the best part of 15 million plus. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. He's apparently got the same agency. He's part of the same agency as Joe Linton. So there's a connection there, and that agency in particular is an agency that Mike Ashley is very close to, and as well Steve Bruce. So there's a lot of natural moving parts there to this deal to make sure that it's really a no-brainer. For me, if we can do anything, it's get someone like him wrapped up quickly, because the longer this summer goes on, and the more difficult the other teams around us find it to be able to get hold of a player like that, the quicker they're going to snap him up. I'm just looking at the record there. Statman Keith is always on the button. Yeah. 48 goals in 172 appearances, 14 assists. That is not bad. You know, there was a lot of people. There's, I think, a couple of people talking about Josh King. I think it might have even been Steve on one of his shows saying, you know, he doesn't score that many goals. Well, he does. He's not a bad striker. You know, so. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer for me. Get that deal wrapped up as soon as possible, and you've got a really, really good, valuable striker there for absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about Josh King as well, obviously, with that we're talking about links with Bournemouth, then, and this goes out to one of the other rumours that we've had recently is Christopher Ajer from Celtic. So, you know, 6'6", you know, if you watched Steve Shaw, Lee Clark the other day, Lee Clark thinks he's a phenomenal player. He said when they had him, he was sent out to Kilmarnock, where obviously Clark, he'd been manager at one point, and they asked him to play him as like a defensive midfielder. Just didn't get him a bit more accomplished on the ball, so that's helped him obviously with a step back until the centre half. And apparently, obviously, we've just been talking about Josh King, and he's an international teammate with him as well. So, you know, he's captain of his country at 19-year-old. So that to me tells me that he is already a leader, and he won't take any nonsense, whether he's at Celtic or whether he's at Newcastle. And for the rumoured £8 million transfer fee, which is getting bandied about, and since we're in that Poundland department at the minute, Poundland department or not, I still think at that price, 8 million is an absolute snip. And I don't know whether you can see in the background there, Pete and Chris, but he's already got Rodrigo from Leeds under his finger. So hopefully that, you know, if he makes the step to the two, he'll be able to keep that going next year when we come head to head with our friends and Apollo Junction's friends at Leeds United. So, what do you make of Christopher Ajer then, Pete?
You know what? I don't really watch a lot of Scottish football. I just don't. A lot of it's not really on TV as much as it used to be, or it's at times now where we tend to be doing a stream, match day live or something, so we never actually get to see a lot of the games. However, I've seen him a couple of times, but I go off people that watch him on a regular basis. And to be fair, a lot of the Celtic fans that I know, they've said he's not had a great season, but nobody has at Celtic this season. But as a player, they really rate him, and it's 23 years old. They say that he's only going to get better. Lee Clark said the same. You know, Liam Kennedy said the same. I have not heard many people, in fact, any people that have talked negatively about him. And like you've said, the best part of 6 million for someone that's 23 years old that could actually go on to get even better. You know, it's a no-brainer. You've talked about the links with Josh King and you know, playing for the same country and all the rest of it. It just makes sense. Now, the one thing is that we've had a lot of things like this that just make sense, but we're so slow to react as a club to get these players in that we tend to miss out. Now, you've already seen that there's links to Leverkusen and one or two other clubs starting to creep in now, because I think people realise that actually it would be a fantastic deal to get a player like that in. So there, you know, again, it's one of them that needs to get wrapped up ASAP, you know, to get those players in, because, you know, regardless of what owners you've got, they're two players that actually you could work with instantly. if you had them in your squad. Yes, you could get the odd, more expensive player if you're just taking over the club, but they're still players that you can work with and try and make better. There's no doubt in my mind that if we got taken over and Rafa Benitez came in, he could work with a player like Aya, who is essentially potentially an upgrade on the likes of Lejeune, who was brought in and did fantastic under Rafa Benitez. Josh King, arguably a much better technically gifted alternative to Hosselu that he had when he was at Newcastle previously, Rafa Benitez. So you've already got better players there that you can work with. So for Aya, definitely get that deal done. I'd like to see a lot more of him. It's just a case of, are we quick enough and logical enough to make that happen?
Yeah, I think if people go back to when we had our friends Dictator on Loaded Football Weekly 10 days ago it was now, and obviously they were Celtic fans and they were raving about Arya, and they said he's probably at that stage now where he can make that step to the Premier League. He's at a similar stage of his career now what Van Dijk was, and obviously there was always all those rumours about will Van Dijk be able to do it in the Premier League, and was all those doubts. And that's always going to be the case when you come from somewhere like Celtic or Rangers, because the SPFL isn't the same as the Premier League. But if you can dominate a league like that, there's nothing to say that you can't dominate when you come to a Premier League side either. It's your character that makes the difference. So obviously, I think that was a great link. Obviously, having that information from Mick and Joe from Dictator when we had them on. Chris, what's your thoughts on Christopher Aya for Newcastle?
Yeah, I like Pete. I don't watch much Scottish football, I've got to be honest. But who wouldn't want a 6'6" centre back? Like I'm always a big fan of tall centre backs. It's a threat in the opposition box and it's a threat in your own box as well, in terms of being able to defend and marking and stuff like that. So from what I've heard, he sounds really good. He's at the right age, and between 6 and 8 million, it just feels a bit like a no-brainer to me. We've heard a lot of Celtic fans praising him. Being the captain of your country, we've said all season long we haven't got many leaders in the team. I personally, I'd pay more than 6 to 8 million based on what I've heard, and the stats we've seen, and also the player profile. A ball playing centre half who's tall, strong, and is the captain of his country, and he's 23. It all just ticks all the boxes, doesn't it? So for me, I'd go all out for him. What I thought was interesting as well, Rich, I don't know if you and Pete have seen it, but there's links as well to Saliba from Arsenal.
That's who we're going to go on to next.
Sorry, yeah.
It's all right. You can start it off if you want.
Yeah, do you know what? I thought that was quite interesting as well, although I did find it weird the way they were saying, if we can't get the Aya deal done, we'll go for Saliba on loan, which I thought was a bit odd. But he's another one, isn't he? Arsenal paid mega money for him, from what I gather, and he's spent the season on loan at Nice, and apparently he's been a revelation. Yeah. So I think bringing him in on loan, he's young. I didn't realise he was only 20, actually. I've just seen that come up there. So for me, bringing him in would be great as well. The only thing I'd say, though, if we were to bring him in, is I would like to see us kind of learn our lesson a little bit, and we try and persuade Arsenal to have a clause in there with an option to buy. I love loan signings in terms of having a bit of a try before you buy, but I find it very frustrating, as with Joe Willock this season, where you don't have a set fee agreed. We did it with Kennedy, didn't we? We had we brought him in and there was no fee agreed, and then we brought him in, from what I'm aware, on his second year, and we agreed a fee so that if we wanted him, we could have him. And we had the same with Willems. Obviously, we didn't take up the Kennedy deal because he had an absolute shocker. Sadly, we didn't take up the Willems one, even though, if he'd have stayed fit, I think we'd have snapped their hands off. I think it was between 8 and 10 million, which seemed like a bargain. But you can't underestimate the value and how important it is to have those kind of deals in place. Because as we've seen with Joe Willock, if at the start of the season, if we'd have said, listen, let's put a 10 million buy-in clause, and Arsenal would have gone, that's ridiculous. It's got to be at least 15, 16 million. You go, all right then. And maybe the club would be thinking, oh, we're not going to pay 15 or 16 million for him. and then he goes and has the half season that he's had, the club might actually be knocking on the door now to give the 15, 16 million, even though he's selling the club, because he's thinking, I've potentially got a 30, 35 million player on my hands there. And now, if we were to go back in for Willock, there's going to be a host of other clubs who are going to be interested in him, and that's going to drive the price up. So if we were to go for Saliba, I would hope that we would kind of agree some deal where if we wanted to keep him, we'd agree a fee from the outset. Whether or not that'll happen, I don't know. But Keith again with the stats on Aya. He just ticks every box, and I know people will automatically compare him to Van Dijk, and Van Dijk's a bit of an entity on his own, really, isn't he? You don't see many players play in the Premier League, go to Scotland, and just advance as much as he has, and then come back to the Premier League and be such a force. Like he literally, when Liverpool are missing him, Liverpool don't look like the same player. But for a gamble of between 6 and 8 million, you've got to take it for Aya. You've got to.
I think the one thing that alarmed me slightly regards Saliba when I heard the news today was obviously if they weren't able to get Aya in, was it would probably be a loan deal. So my concern with that is for two things. What happens to then Joe Willock? Because obviously we would love to have Joe Willock back at the club. Can we afford the 20 to 30 million, what we're getting banded about at this moment in time? Probably not. So, then you start to think, well, if it's a loan deal and looking at Saliba, you can only have one loan from each club in the Premier League. So then, you've got to start putting you can't have both, the eggs are in two different baskets, can you? You've got to have them in one basket as such. So, if you were offering Saliba to me or you were offering Willock back, I'll be having, and I know probably you two would probably agree with this, you'd be having Willock back on a loan with an option to buy tied in straight away. You wouldn't have just a loan back for the option for the year. Obviously, we're going at the last 10 minutes of the show now, lads. So we'll round up the transfer one way. A couple of people, obviously, if we know that there's links. I've always getting banded about. It has been banded about before, so we'll touch on it for a few minutes. But would either of you be happy to see this guy back in a black and white shirt again in the future, or this guy back in a black and white shirt again in the future? So, right at this moment in time, with me, Tony, I don't think you'd see him back in a Newcastle shirt for a long time if he was to come back at all. I think out of the two, I think you've probably got more chance of Adam Armstrong coming back. And the main reason for that is because the banding around a £20 million price tag from Blackburn. However, Newcastle have a 40% sell-on fee tied into the contract. So technically, we would be getting him for 12 million. So, 12 million for Adam Armstrong for what he's, I still don't think he was treated right when he was here with Rafa. Unfortunately, I don't think Rafa dealt with him and Tony, to be fair. But as we've discussed before in previous shows, they perhaps wouldn't have went on to be the players they are now if they hadn't left the club. Been able to progress, have a bit more security around their own career and stuff like that. So, that's allowed them to develop the players they have now. But what's your thoughts on that, Pete? With regards to Tony and Armstrong, personally, I don't think Tony will come back. I think with 12 million Armstrong, if that's what the truth is, 12 million for probably a guy who 28 goals this season in the Championship, only second behind Ivan Toney. Is it something you'd look at?
I'm going to disappoint a few people here. I wouldn't take either of them back at all. And I've been very, very sort of like straight with that with that mindset. I just wouldn't. We have a knack as a fan base of when a player leaves and does okay elsewhere. It doesn't matter what division or what country they're in. We always tend to be, oh, why did we get rid of them? Why did we lose them? We should have never sold them. Blah 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 blah. And it tends to happen all the time, even if a player isn't just not good enough. Now, you raised a good point about, Rafa Benitez not treating Armstrong right. I actually think Rafa Benitez did treat Armstrong okay. It's just the fact that Rafa Benitez saw, just like he saw in Henry Sarve, just like he saw in one or two other players, he just wasn't good enough. And sometimes we have to remember that players just at times, no matter where they come from, whether they're Geordies or not, sometimes they're just not good enough. And unfortunately, Armstrong for me was the same as Campbell when he came through. the youth ranks, scored goals for fun. You know, Chopra scored goals for fun at the under-21s or the 23s, whatever you want to call it. But when you make the step up to the first team, they just didn't have it. And Armstrong went on a couple of loans lower down and did okay. You know, okay, scored a few goals, wasn't the greatest. So he wasn't he wasn't setting the world alight. And it was the same with Ivan Toney. Went on a few loans, didn't set the world alight, and came back. Didn't really show that they were pushing for the first team. Had some games here and there, but not really again setting the world alight. So for me, it was the right decision to sell both of them, to move both of them on. And you know what? We wouldn't be talking about Adam Armstrong and Ivan Toney as top scorers in the championship if they hadn't been moved on. So it was the right thing to do for them and their career. And sometimes you have to do what's right for them. You know, some of the other top teams like Man United and Liverpool do it all the time. They let good players leave. You look at Michael Keane, for example, at Everton. Wasn't even getting a chance at Man United. Left, made a career for himself. Ryan Shawcross, another example. You could go through the list. Sometimes you have to let players go in order for them to produce better in their careers. And that's exactly what's happened. I don't think either of them would do the business coming back to us, because I don't think either of them are necessarily Premier League ready. We have to remember that, you know, Armstrong and Ivan Toney have been doing it, yes, for a season or two, but in the Championship. Again, the Championship is a very, very different league to the Premier League. You can just ask Dwight Gale that. Dwight Gale scores goals for fun in the Championship, but you put him in the Premier League, the guy barely scores a goal or looks a threat at all, because you're playing against better caliber of players. It'll be interesting to see what Ivan Toney does this season. I also believe that it'll be interesting to see how Ivan Toney gets on against the Premier League level defenders, because you're not playing against the same quality of defenders in the Championship. So for him to step up to that will tell us a lot more about whether he's a Premier League player. And I think the best thing for him to do is stay at Brentford in order to see that, because he's going to play every minute of every game. If he came to Newcastle, he wouldn't. Adam Armstrong needs to show me and everybody else, right, himself more than anything, that he can hang with the top end of the Championship. Because for all the goals that he scored them at Blackburn, who were like middle of the table. I want to see Adam Armstrong score the goals that are going to project a team into the Premier League, that are going to get them into the playoffs, that are going to be the upper echelons of the Championship. So somewhere like Fulham, somewhere like West Brom would be a nice move for him in order to get that opportunity to play in a better team. So I don't want those type of players at Newcastle. I don't think in our current format that we're in a position to handle those type of players, which is why we lost them in the first place. I think at this point right now, someone like a Josh King with a little bit more experience that scored goals in the Premier League is the best option for us. I'll just end on a little point, because Yano is great in the chat. He put a question mark on it for Mbabu. The same applies for Mbabu. Mbabu, during his time at Newcastle, had one great game against Chelsea on the left-hand side. He played left-back, and I think he was up against, might have been against Hazard or Willian, and was outstanding for that one game. But it goes back to the same point. He was riddled with injury at Newcastle for the whole time he was at the club. And straight after that game, I think it was either even during that game, he got injured and was out for months afterwards. You know, so Rafa Benitez made that decision, but he made that decision because he's looking at a player that was never fit, that he had nothing to work with. He's then gone on at Young Boys and absolutely tore it up. And yes, you would have loved to have had him back. He's now playing in Germany. But the same rule applies. If a player is not doing the business for you at your club and you can't see where the progression is going to be made, whether it's for quality or injuries, I'm not keeping players on sentimental reasons. We're not in a position to do that at our club. And that's just how I see it.
Chris, your thoughts? Would you have Armstrong or Toney back?
In a short answer, no. I agree with a lot of what Pete said there. For me, what I would like to see another club take a punt on Adam Armstrong. I agree with Pete. I think he needs to go to a higher level club, whether that be in the Championship or maybe the lower Premier League. I'd like to see him get an opportunity. But I would think it would be good for Newcastle if we went for 20 million and we couped the 8 million and reinvested it elsewhere. I mean, imagine he goes for 20 million and then we spend the 8 million that we'd receive off the 40% on Aya. Like, for me, that would be a better scenario. Ivan Toney's a bit of an interesting one. Again, when I look at him, he's got all the attributes. He seems to be a bit of a big game player. Now, obviously, we didn't see that in Newcastle because he didn't get the opportunities. But you could put that down to himself. I thought it was interesting that Mbabu came out and said he really enjoyed his time in Newcastle, and he said, I think he said in an interview, I had to leave Newcastle because it wasn't working out for me. I needed to grow up. So I think that was acknowledgement from him that he wasn't ready, he wasn't mature enough, and the best thing for him was to leave, get some game time, really concentrate, get his head down and work hard. And that's what he's done at Young Boys, as Pete said. And then he's gone on and got his big move to Wolfsburg, and it's worked out really well for him. He said actually that he wouldn't rule out coming back to Newcastle. And, from the player that I've seen at Wolfsburg, again, I'm not an avid German football watcher, but from the highlights that I've seen, he certainly looks really good. But we wouldn't have seen that player at Newcastle potentially, because he wasn't getting those run of games. Like Pete said, he was constantly breaking down with injury, and apparently that was to do with his lifestyle, according to Mbabu. He wasn't taking the job seriously in terms of looking after himself, keeping himself fit. But yeah, I'd rather see Armstrong get the big move. I wish him all the best. It'd be great to have him back once he's proven himself a little bit, but I don't really think he's ready now, and he's certainly not what we need. I don't think right now. I'd prefer to go with someone more proven, I think. And thanks, by the way, to I think it was Jano. It was Dunhill actually who told me about Van Dijk. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought he went from Southampton to Celtic to Liverpool, because I know he came from Scotland, then he went to Southampton, then Liverpool. So I got that completely wrong. Sorry about that. Because Liverpool have got a bit of a history, like we have. We're being linked with all kinds of Bournemouth players at the moment, and Liverpool have obviously got that feeder club stance with Southampton, haven't they? Because they just sign everyone from Southampton. But to go very briefly, Rich, before we wrap up. I'll tell you another player who I'd like us to look at, and he's from Bournemouth, and he's kind of gone off the radar a little bit. But I was a big fan of that David Brooks,
Yeah, I
was a real big fan of him. And I don't know. Again, I've not watched much Championship football this season, but I don't know how he's got on. I know he's been ravaged with injuries, and he missed a big chunk of the Premier League season when they went down, didn't he? But
I think he could
be a player we could look at.
I think he's suffered with a few injuries this year as well, and I think that's probably why. It's the reason why he hasn't left Bournemouth as yet. I think with regards to Brooks, obviously he was playing yesterday for Wales, in the friendly against Albania, so it might be worth where people take a look at him over the over the Euros and have a look, see how fit he is, how he's doing. If not, they might go re-enter for him and see in January or this time next year when he's proved his fitness a bit. So I suppose it's one to watch. But I think he was. Remember that season when obviously Harry Wilson was there as well, and they had on one flank, and they had David Brooks on the other flank, and they looked really good, didn't they? As a tandem on either flank, and then obviously had Fraser involved as well. So it was, it's definitely one to watch. And but I think it's for him fitness wise. So. Just to round it up, because obviously we've got one last slight topic, which will only take a couple minutes to go through, and that was the Turkish special that was released on last week. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, the Turkish special, I think Pete's grinning, so he might know. It's not a kebab, Pete. It was this.
Oh.
Now, I saw it straight away, and I thought, I don't think I've seen such a really bad fake in my life. It just looks cheap. You look at the color, the colouring on it. It just looks like a complete knock-up, cheap skate thing. I don't even think the design, going off what you see with the Wolves home shirt, which is supposedly being leaked, and also the away shirt, which was leaked as well. It doesn't seem to fit into the design package that they went for. No. I know they're not like Puma, where Puma seem to have a similar template for a lot of the teams when they had them. They're actually going to try and apparently Castor are going to try and style them specifically different for each team, which I think is quite a good one. There was also, I found this one, which was, we always get the strip knockups and stuff when people find out there's going to be new kits released and stuff like this. And I thought this one was a bit more similar to possibly what we may see. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think that's a bad one. I don't know if I'm a fan of the gold, if I'm honest. I always used to prefer, like the royal blue trim that we used to always have on the Adidas ones, and a bit similar to the blue that we used to have with the Essex McEwen's shirt. I don't know if when we first came back up to the Premier League, I always used to like the really like blue trim rather than the gold. But what we all thought when you saw that the Turkish special on at the end of the week.
Sure. Just looking at it now, if you put it back up again,
look,
if you get past the fact that it's a disgusting kit, it looks horrible. It actually if you look at the rumored Wolves ones, the rumored Wolves kits just look pristine. They look like proper kits. That one just looks like it's like a pajama top. You know what I mean? Just like it doesn't even look like an actual proper football kit. So that for me is the first thing that took me away after the fact that I look at the hideous colours and patterns on it. It just actually doesn't look real. It just looks like you said, a complete mock-up. I would hope that Castor would produce a better kit than that, because for the clubs that they have produced kits for previously, they've been quite popular. And I'll be honest with you, Puma have made some horrific kits in the years gone by. They've not been the best at all. So I think it's the right time to get a new kit sponsor. And actually, the mock-up ones that you put on there, Richie, the ones I actually like the gold on that kit. I actually think that looks like a real smart kit. And there's a few more that are out there with the second and third kits examples as well. There's an opportunity here to like really get into the club and speak to fans about what they want, because ultimately, it's just fans are the ones that are buying it. As a club, you should be talking to your fans to say what is the type of kit that you would like your players to wear, because then you're going to get bigger and better sales from it. So that's just something that we need to do moving forward. But yeah, that Wolves one looks like a nice kit for them. But I'm certainly hoping for better than that blue. That blue. I don't know what to call it. It's just an absolute.
Do you not agree with Keith? It looks more like a Scotland shirt.
Yeah,
it could do. Could a bit of a tartan mix sort of thing.
Oh, God. Oh.
I think the one thing, Chris, what do you think? Because you look at the Wolves one here, and Castor are branding themselves as a premium sports brand, and so you look at some of the normal like training gear and stuff like that, and it's quite pricey. So it's they're going for the expensive brand sort of thing. Obviously, they won't be able to do that as such with kit costs and stuff like that, because obviously there's a market price for football kits and stuff like that. And the rumours, they're rumoured about £60 of what we're going to hear for the Wolves one. So I'd imagine it's going to be something similar with the Newcastle. But just looking at that one straight away, the quality on that shirt compared to the knock-up one is like tenfold. You look at the embroidered badge by the looks of it on the shirt there as well. The way the stitching is, the collar looks a million times better and stuff like that. So, I think the Wolves kits look pretty decent, and I would like to see how Castor are going to design them. But it's got to be better than that, hasn't it, Chris?
Oh, Rich, surely. I mean, that looks, and funnily enough, did you see the picture of that blue kit? And the lady that was wearing
it.
It did, without being disrespectful to her, it does look like something that blue kit looks like something that my nan would wear. It does. I was shocked because I to me it's got to be a fake one for me, because like you've rightly said, the quality is just not there, is it? It all just looks like someone's just like ironed it on. And I totally take your point, about it being a premium shirt, because it's got to be, this is their big opportunity to really put themselves out there, Castore. I actually, to be honest, I didn't know that they were doing the kits for Wolves, but those Wolves kits look really nice, really, really well made, real good quality, and a lot of effort's gone into them. So if our kit looked anything like that, I'd be really happy because they look really nice. And I've not been a big fan of the Puma kits over the years. I really haven't. They've produced the odd good one, don't get me wrong, but on the whole, I'd say they've not been great. And the actual quality of the shirt hasn't been great. But that mock-up one that you had before, Rich, the one with the gold trim, I'm a bit like Pete. I like the golds. I think it's nice, but I do take your point. The blue would be lovely as well. I just hope it is a good quality shirt because they've got a real opportunity with Newcastle. I mean, if we get our takeover, we're going to be literally the richest club in the world, and they're going to be representing our club. And Newcastle fans are so passionate about their club. If they get that shit right and Newcastle fans are fully behind it and we get our new owners and everyone's buzzing, imagine how many shirts they're going to sell. And then imagine all the extra fans that we're going to get around the world, because we're going to be signing these, better players, and we're going to have better better players, better performances on the pitch, hopefully higher finishes, etc., etc. There's going to be a lot of media attention on us. I think Castore, without sounding too cocky here, are going to see us as a real coup. And I think that they're going to really invest a lot of time and effort to make sure that those kits are spot on. And that's no disrespect to Wolves whatsoever, because Wolves are in a position that we'd love to be in right now. They've got a fantastic set of owners. They're really forward-thinking club, and they really want to try and progress. So I think I hope to God it's not that blue kit. If it is, I really hope that it isn't. It doesn't look anything like that. Maybe that's a mock-up of, say, a third goalie kit or something. Maybe we might get away with that. I don't know. But the quality is what concerns me more than anything. I'm not a big fan of the blue and all the different patterns on it, but it was more the quality that struck me. I thought, oh my God, I hope to God we don't have that, because it just looks cheap and tatty. And I hope that Castore really, put the money in and produce some really nice kits for us.
Yeah, well, as I said, just showing the Wolves picture there, that looks, even just like when it's laid on on a table there, the quality's there. The material looks a lot thicker. It looks,
yeah.
Just even compared to that just looks like paper thin. Do you know what I mean?
It does.
You could probably trace through it. It's that thin. You know what I mean?
If that caught fire, Rich, you go up.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
The only reason why I said about the knock-up one with the gold on, the only reason why I didn't like the gold, and it might be controversial because I do think it's a smart top, is the gold reminds me of our championship season when we went for the gold for the first time. We had it on the back and stuff. That's the only reason I'd like to go away from the gold. So, but don't get me wrong, I think it's a much better design, that concept that someone's knocked up than what we saw, with the cheap Turkish special. So, and anyway, just as this last few minutes, because we literally we always look to try to end on a high here, and we just wanted to put everyone at Loaded Mag at Loaded HQ wanted to say our congratulations to one of our own today with Miggy Almiron. Congratulations on the birth of his son Francisco Almiron, who was born this afternoon. So many congratulations, Miggy. We hopefully he'll have a black and white onesie on by the time he gets through to the back into the northeast at the end of the summer. But we just wanted to end up with a nice positive like that. We always like a good NUFC news to finish on. So there we go. What better way to finish up the show? So thank you very much for everyone who's been in the chat and putting all of the comments in. It's been absolutely great to have you watching along live tonight. So I'd just like to say goodbye from me, goodbye from Pete, and goodbye from Chris. And we shall see you all very soon. We do have a Loaded Football Weekly this Wednesday night. And this week we will be joined by a few different musical acts. I'll just drop that one little one in there. So we'll keep them on suspense there for you. But what I would like to say is that once again, thank you very much for watching, everyone, and we will see you all soon. Good night.
Take care, guys.